And like from the first interaction that you see with them in the movie, he strokes her face, but it's not just like a
it could be that maybe the actors were attracted to each other and it showed on screen. We're unsure, but there was a bit of an undertone of a bit of sexual tension between Athena and Zeus that honestly was a bit confusing, because when they first talked with each other before Zeus mentions her name, we thought it might have been Hera, but we were really wrong.
Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, personally, if Zeus did not say my daughter, I would have assumed
it was Aphrodite or Hera.
Someone that's not, someone who he shouldn't be interested in. It was just a very confusing relationship.
Because especially the way that they had her come in, she was snooping. So automatically we thought it was Hera, because Hera's always snooping some kind of way. Because she disguised herself as a statue, and then he sensed that there was another god in the area, and he was like, oh, reveal yourself, and she was a naked statue. And then she came and she was like, oh, hey, and they were just going back and forth, and then he was like, my daughter, and you're like,
yeah,
that's a very interesting father-daughter relationship. But on a positive note, she was one of his favored out of the group, which would go along with what we've learned in class about their relationship, since, as Seda mentioned, she literally is a part of him, because she came out of his brain, so she is solely Zeus. And so from that perspective, they did a good job in the movie. And even at the end, when they were fighting, Zeus rescued Athena and took her back up to Olympus. So he didn't take anybody else. It was just Athena.
And along
everybody
with her
else
being favored, in the movie, it's Zeus says, don't help any of the humans in your godly forms. Ares, that we later on learned
was not Apollo.
Right. He gets punished for, helping Theseus, but Athena's right there, and she doesn't get punished at all. I mean, yes, given that she doesn't help them, because, she is in her godly form, but she doesn't help them, at that moment at least. But she's not punished for it at all, and Zeus just kind of forgives her. And she's also the one that gives advice to Poseidon, saying, oh, you should help them, even though Zeus told us not to. And we won't, tell on you. We'll, it'll be okay. But there's just
Athena's the only one that shows blatant disregard. She brought 2 horses for Theseus and for Phaedra, and she was like, okay, I know that you just saw Zeus kill Ares, but here are these 2 horses. They're gonna run until they die, and Zeus is still just standing there, and he's crying, and he's like, we're not gonna help you anymore. And it's really weird, because he's just a lot more sensitive than we're used to.
He's very aware of his emotions.
Yes.
Where I feel like the things we've read about Zeus, as much as he was a womanizer, he was very aware that he had a lot of authority and rage. And I feel like that's the only real emotions that he really rode on. He could be loving on a certain scale, but not too much. He was
either lustful or angry the majority of the time. But in this movie, like, there would just be scenes where it's just music and him crying, or there's like
mourning the death of killing Ares, him mourning the trouble that they got into, him being very loving and fatherly towards Theseus as his human form, him being loving towards his own children, especially Athena. We see a lot of range of emotions of a sensitive, powerful Zeus.
Yes. And next, I would actually like to talk about Zeus and Theseus. They have a very close relationship from the beginning, although Theseus does not know that it's Zeus. Zeus shows himself as an old man, and he basically kind of mentors Theseus from a very, very young age. For Theseus, that's the only father figure that he has. According to the rest of the town that he lives in, his mother, in the movie, his mother was raped by the entire town, and so nobody knows who his father is. and it's just him and his mother. And then there's this one old man in the town that's nice to them, and he teaches Theseus how to fight better than any other warrior in the vicinity. And Theseus is a peasant, and we assume because of the relationship that Zeus and Theseus had since Theseus was very young, that he was very confident, because the level of confidence that he had when we saw him in the movie did not make sense for being a peasant child, especially one who was rejected by the rest of society.
And it was a constant reminder,
Yes.
especially from the villagers. They would always call him the bastard child. They would always refer to him as a very stigmatized way, which was...
And they would take it out a lot on his mother. His mother
Exactly.
wasn't treated well either within the town. But despite all of that, Theseus was very cocky and aware that as much as everybody would give him crap, he was a very strong fighter and a strong person, and he had no problem taking care of his mother and fighting for her when she couldn't.
And to a point where he threatened generals, and he fights and is beating people who are of much higher standing than he is. And like when you see parts of his childhood, he would purposely go and fight bigger boys so that like he could just prove how big and strong and excellent he is. And he just did not care for anybody else. Also, he seemed to have a very, in terms of just the gods as a whole in Theseus, he seemed to have a very blatant disregard for the gods until later scenes where he actually was able to see them in person. Then he was like, oh, you guys do exist. That's wonderful. But before that, he had a very, very distinct dislike for them. His mother was very devout in her worship, but other than that, he did not care for them whatsoever. He was very set on, I make my own fate. I take care of myself. The gods didn't help my mother. They never helped me, so why should I care about them? And it's never mentioned that Poseidon has anything to do with Theseus. There's nothing that would indicate that he is his father. There's no interaction between the two of them. And it does not really go along with how the gods are portrayed, that the gods, just because they see that Theseus is favored of Zeus, that all of a sudden they're just like, oh, well, because Zeus likes you, all of us are going to help you, even though we're not supposed to. We're all just going to help you. That makes no sense. The gods are very individual. They have their own, even when there's multiple of them that want to help a particular human, they have their own reasons for wanting to do that. It's never because, oh, well, Zeus is over here, he likes you, so I'm going to help you.
They're very individualized and very independent of each other and separate from Zeus. As much as he is their authority, they do have their own mind.
Exactly.